Congratulations on being newly listed on the CSE.
Thank you to everyone for tuning back into another newly listed on the CSE clip. Today we are talking to GeneTether Therapeutics, Inc. This is a company that has listed on the CSE late March, trades under the symbol GTTX, and representing GeneTether, we've got Roland Boivin. He's the CEO of the company, along with Mr. Geoffrey Sargent, who is the Chief Scientific Officer for the company. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. How are you?
Very good, thank you, and thanks
Great,
for having
thanks.
us.
Excellent. Well, this is, typically we have one person from the company, but this is a sort of an interesting play called GeneTether. We want to make sure that our viewers can fully understand what this company is about. So, Roland, why don't we begin by talking a little bit about what the company does and what the vision here is?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, and I'll start at a high level. And as you can imagine, Jeff will be the one who will be digging a lot deeper on the science side of it. But really, GeneTether is an innovative genetic medicine company focusing on gene editing efficiency. So what we have is a highly disruptive platform that drives efficiency in gene correction and gene complementation strategies. And again, Jeff will expand on that in a minute. Just want to let you know that we've just closed the IPO, as you said, just listed recently, closed an IPO, $4.5 million. Pleased with that in these pretty difficult market conditions. On that though, I'll let Jeff explain a little bit more on the science, because it's something he needs to give a bit of background before we start talking about what we have as a company. So Jeff, I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Roland. Yeah, to give you a little bit of context, I mean, one of the things I'm going to start out from the top is kind of a mantra that we have, and that's proximity matters. And I'll explain why that's important in just a second. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background on, when we talk about gene editing and CRISPR and Cas and all these buzzwords that are out there now, how do you do that? What does that mean? And part of the process is that if you're going to fix a mutation in the DNA, say, for example, sickle cell, if you wanted to correct the sickle cell mutation, the first thing you have to do is damage the DNA. And the second thing is you provide a second piece of DNA to fix that damage. Okay, so that's kind of the concept, the conceptual process. Now, with CRISPR-Cas, what you do, this is a nuclease that you can program. You can give it an address, right? Okay, so if you wanted to fix sickle cell mutation again, you would give the CRISPR-Cas protein the address of exon 1 in the beta globin gene. It would go there in the cell. You would introduce it into the cell and go there and cut the DNA. Okay, so the CRISPR-Cas part of it is to make site-specific DNA strand breaks. Okay, now if you wanted to fix mutation, what you do is you have that second piece of DNA and it has information to fix the mutation. But the way the experiment is usually done is that second piece of DNA used to fix is just floating around in the cell. And what we have done, when I say proximity matters, is that we figured out how to attach that piece of DNA you used to repair those DNA strand breaks to the Cas9. So it's physically near the DNA strand breaks when you got to fix them. Okay, and so that's the conceptual idea. Now, part of the problem is if that repair DNA is not nearby and you make DNA double strand breaks, then bad things happen. You can get deletions where you lose DNA sequence. You can add in extra pieces of DNA sequence. So by adding this repair template nearby, you help to try to prevent that.
Very interesting. This is, something that's a sort of a new thing to me anyways. So I'm very curious to actually talk to the both of you a little bit more and find out more about the company. So what was the strategy behind taking this public?
Yeah, well, first off, just some quick background on how GeneTether was created. It was basically co-founded by Jeff, who's here with me today, but also it was also co-founded by Dr. Bill Gardner, who is the founder of EGB Ventures. So the model that EGB Venture has for its portfolio companies typically is they take the companies public at an earlier stage, not for an exit, but it's a lot more, and it's something that they call public venture capital. And so in addition to obviously having more flexibility in the funding alternatives when you're publicly listed, it's also a question of taking companies into the public markets at a very modest valuation and actually building through successful execution of the solid plan, which would then translate into share price and market cap. So it really gives an opportunity to participants in the IPO to really be part of the upside. And that's the main reason for it.
I want to talk a little bit about, not only the both of your background and how you got into this space, but any of your key team members that you brought along to move this technology forward. So why don't we start with Geoffrey on this one? Talk to us a little bit about how you got into this space.
Sure. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself first. I mean, I have a PhD in biochemistry and biophysics. And, one of the things I like to tell people is that I've been working in gene editing since 1987, before gene editing was a thing.
Okay.
But, the way I got into it was that, when you're in graduate school, you have to review papers in front of your laboratory. And one of the last things I did was to review this paper from these two scientists, Raju Kukulapati and Oliver Smithies. And it was the first paper to show you could do gene editing in animal cells. I mean, before that, it was just thought to be too hard. So this is a real watershed moment. And I realized then that if we're ever going to have the capability to treat genetic disease, inherited diseases, then this technology has to be developed and improved. And so I literally in 1987 set out to make my career kind of centered around doing that. So I started some of this work at when I was in England at a place called the Imperial Cancer Research Fund, and then I moved from there to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, where I really was focused on understanding the cellular machinery that is used to repair DNA double-strand breaks. Okay, because it was clear then that if you can make a DNA double-stranded break in a particular place, then you can increase the gene editing efficiency massively. And so some of the work actually at Baylor College of Medicine inspired our development of the platform, 20 years later. And so from Baylor, I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area in 1998 to work in biotech. It turns out I have I can stand the risk in biotech startups. So, and I've stayed out here working in biotech and academia in gene editing when I can as the opportunity presented to me. But in 2017, we were doing some gene editing experiments where we were trying to fix sickle cell and cystic fibrosis mutations. And I could see we're making DNA strand breaks in like 5% of the cells, but our gene editing efficiencies were 10,000 times lower. And I started thinking, what's the disconnect here? I knew from my work at Baylor it shouldn't be this bad. And that inspired us to be able to engineer this modification of Cas9 to bring in our DNA strand templates near the DNA strand break when it's being made. I'd also like to introduce Peter Sampson, Dr. Peter Sampson. Peter's a medicinal chemist by training. He got his PhD in organic chemistry from University of Waterloo. But Peter brings in that whole translational aspect of biotech. He has been in the pre-IND space. And so Peter brings in that aspect, that part of his experience. He's also worked even though he's an organic chemist, he's worked in genomics and epigenetics. So he brings in that side of knowledge of life sciences. And he's also had a lot of experience in intellectual property management. So Peter's a great addition to our team to help balance things out and complement some of the expertise that we need.
Thank you for that, Geoffrey. It's really fascinating stuff. Roland, I'm gonna pass you the virtual microphone. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I joined in this last October as CEO of the company, and a bit of background on myself. I spent almost 20 years at 3M, and that's where I really learned to run a business, whether it was sales, marketing, business development. I actually ran the consumer division there for several years. And when I left, I was an executive of the company reporting directly to the president. And then comes into the second stage of my experience, basically as CFO of publicly listed companies. Several of them, the latest one being Medexus Pharmaceuticals. During my time as CFO, I raised over $150 million in financings, all kinds of different financings, and also led license and M&A deals of over 200 million as well. So that's my background, and I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on the chair of our scientific ad board, which is Dr. Kuldeep Niyote. So Kuldeep is, as I said, the new chair of our SAB. He's a Canadian, but he's based in the Boston area. He's got a PhD in molecular genetics, entrepreneur in residence at Facet in Toronto and at NIH in Maryland. He started as a research scientist at Pfizer and then moved into different roles at J&J and Eli Lilly, where he was more focused on new ventures, external collaborations, external innovations, creating new codes, et cetera. He actually led Lilly's acquisition of Prevail Therapeutics over about a year and a half ago. His expertise is critical to us because in this space, there's a lot of collaborations and a lot of collaboration opportunities. We've already had some discussions. We are in discussions with other genetic medicine companies to talk about collaboration, and Kuldeep's been a key person involved in that as well. So he's already bringing a lot of value. And finally, quick word on our CFO, Jean Jen. Jean is a CPA CA, over 12 years of experience in finance, accounting, public and private companies in the life science sector. She's been a great addition to our team and she's doing a great job. These are the main people on our team right now, Anil.
Thank you for that, Roland. You mentioned collaboration, but I imagine that this is a space that's also got a lot of competition. I'm not sure if you have how much competition you have, but I want to talk a little bit about something that might differentiate not only your team, but also your vision from some of the peers that might be in this space. And feel free to jump in, both of you.
Yeah, well, I'll start just at a very high level. I mean, there are several companies out there focusing on gene editing. Now, our focus is very specific on gene editing efficiency for gene correction and complementation. One thing that we're really excited about is the fact that our platform is modular. And so that means that we believe it works across most gene editing systems, regardless of disease or organ. And so that's at a very high level. Now, and more on the science side of it, Jeff, I'll let you kind of jump in here.
Sure. I mean, the central theme to what we want to do is increase this, what I would call gene correction. You present to a physician with a genetic disease, we want to be able to fix that mutation. Okay. And so in order to do that, that's actually a quite difficult thing to do. What our technology does and what we've done in our proof of concept is show that we can increase gene editing efficiency, increase the ability to fix mutations at least sevenfold. And so that's really kind of the core drive. What we're trying to do is increase this gene editing efficiency so we can take it to a higher level and be able to use it ultimately in the clinic for treating genetic disease. And this is, you know, if you can only fix a mutation in a few cells, you can't necessarily cure the disease. So that's really where we're driving towards. All right, and the other aspect to this is that we believe our technology is modular. So we can use this with other CRISPR-Cas systems as they're discovered. And this is important because some of them have better efficiencies at being able to cut DNA and target. Some of them are just smaller. And that's really important when you start thinking about how you're going to put all this into the cell.
Thank you for that, Geoffrey. Now, you know, obviously, as you begin trading, this is sort of the starting point. You're just beginning your journey in the public capital markets. Are there any milestones that you are able to talk about that our viewers can look out for in the coming months?
Well, I'm going to start just, you know, obviously Jeff will expand on the R&D milestones per se, but there are other milestones as well to look forward to. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about our IP, but our IP is very strong. It's wholly owned. It's got broad claims in it, covers the different nucleases as Jeff mentioned a little earlier. We've got a patent issued in Australia, and we also received notice of allowance from the USPTO recently. So plus 7 others that are pending. So potential milestones coming up in the IP aspect of it. Also, as I was saying before, collaborations. I mean, we are collaborating right now with a few collaborators like Z Clinics and UC Davis, for instance, and there's going to be more and more of those collaborations, but also potentially collaborations with much larger genetic medicine companies, which is common in this industry. Yep. So those are the non-R&D specific ones. I'll let Jeff expand a little bit on the R&D ones.
Sure. Whenever you have a platform like we have, one of the things that you want to do is show its universality, that it can be used to treat genetic disease in a number of different cells, a number of different genes, and a number of different tissues. And so our really near-term milestones are to simply do that, to demonstrate that we are able to make gene corrections in different genes and different cell lines And we have some particular targets that we're interested in. One is, for example, an inherited disease, kidney disease, in a protein called UMOD or uromodulin. And so that's going to be one of the targets that we're going to be working with. Now, when I say genes, tissues, organs, this is also applicable to plants and animals. And so we have some discussions that are ongoing with a company to work in the plant system. And Roland mentioned that we already have some ongoing collaborations with Z Clinics and UC Davis, where with UC Davis, we're focused on looking at being able to make gene edits in large animals. So this is a technology that's broadly applicable across a lot of different spaces that we think we can play in.
I would encourage all of our viewers to definitely go to your website and read up a little bit more on this company. Obviously read up on the team, their background and expertise. Roland, where can our viewers go to sign up for your press releases, to read up more on this stuff and educate themselves on what your company is doing?
Yeah, our website, basically GeneTether.com is the place where all that can be done. And we have some information on it. We're going to keep updating it, but it's a great place to start for any of your viewers.
Well said. Now, on behalf of our team at the Canadian Securities Exchange, we wish you and your team nothing but success as you move forward and you're building this out. I look forward to hosting both of you on again in the next little while so we can provide our viewers with an update on your successes. But again, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to join us today. To our viewers, you've been listening to both Roland Boivin, he's the CEO, as well as Mr. Geoffrey Sargent, who is the Chief Scientific Officer of GeneTether Therapeutics, Inc., trades on the CSE under the symbol GTTX. And again, I want to thank you all for tuning back in. I'm Anil Mall. I represent the Canadian Securities Exchange. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot, Anil.
Cheers.